It's 2 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling. Your phone is face down, but you can still feel it glowing through the mattress. Your brain won't shut off. You start to wonder if something is wrong with you, but the real answer is far stranger. Your ancestors were awake too. Not occasionally, not by accident. Every single night for hundreds of thousands of years, a portion of the human tribe was lying awake in the dark, on purpose. To understand why, you have to forget everything you think you know about sleep. You were taught that a normal night looks like this. You close your eyes. You drift off. You stay unconscious for 7 or 8 hours. You wake up. One block. One signal. Anything else is a disorder. But that idea is new. Astonishingly new. It's a few hundred years old, tied to gaslights, factory shifts, and clocks that don't care what your body wants. For almost all of human history, the night looked completely different. Picture a small group of early humans, maybe 20 or 30 people, camped in the open under a sky with no light pollution at all. No streetlights, no screens, just fire, stars, and the sounds of a world that doesn't stop moving just because the sun went down. Now picture trying to sleep through that. 8 straight hours, fully unconscious, all at once, with predators in the grass and rival groups on the move. That's not just unlikely. Historian A. Roger Ekirch spent years digging through old diaries, court records, and medical texts, and found something remarkable. Before artificial lighting reshaped the world, people across Europe routinely described 2 sleeps. A first sleep starting not long after dark, then a period of waking in the middle of the night that could last 1 or 2 hours, then a second sleep until morning. That waking period wasn't seen as a problem. It had a name. People called it watching, and it had a purpose. Here's where it gets interesting. If you're part of a small group sleeping in the open, full unconsciousness for everyone, at the same time, for 8 hours straight, is a massive liability. A predator doesn't wait for a convenient moment. Neither does a rival group, a shifting fire, or a sudden change in weather. A tribe that all slept the same way, at the same time, in the same depth, would be exposed for hours with nobody watching the dark. So evolution didn't build one sleep pattern for everyone. It built variation. Some people are naturally wired to feel alert late at night and groggy in the morning. Others crash early and wake before dawn. You've probably noticed this in your own life. Maybe you're the one who's wide awake at midnight while everyone else in the house is dead asleep. Maybe it's the opposite, and you're up before the sun while your friends are still dreaming. For a long time, the assumption was that this variation was just noise, random differences with no real function. But researchers studying hunter-gatherer groups have proposed something different. What if this spread of sleep timing wasn't an accident at all? What if it was a built-in security system? Anthropologists studying groups like the Hadza in Tanzania, one of the last populations on Earth that still lives a largely traditional hunter-gatherer lifestyle, found something striking when they tracked sleep patterns using wearable monitors. At almost any given moment during the night, at least one adult in the group was awake. Not because of insomnia, not because anything had gone wrong, it was simply how the group's biology was distributed. Different people have different internal clocks. Line up enough of those clocks side by side, and you get something close to round-the-clock coverage. Someone is always near the edge of sleep. Someone is always close enough to consciousness to hear a snapped branch or a shift in the wind. In other words, the variation in human sleep may not be a flaw in the system, it might be the system. So what were people actually doing during that middle-of-the-night waking window? Not lying there anxious about the time, the way you might be right now. The historical record paints a surprisingly social, quiet picture. People would talk in low voices. They'd tend the fire. They'd reflect on dreams, sometimes treating them as messages worth discussing. Some would have sex. Others would simply lie there, half aware, half resting, in a state that wasn't quite sleep and wasn't quite full wakefulness either. There's a term for that in-between state, quiet wakefulness. Your brain isn't fully on, the way it is when you're solving a problem or holding a conversation. But it's not fully off either. It's idling, monitoring, present enough to notice if something changes, relaxed enough to drift back into sleep without much effort. This matters because it reframes what good sleep even means. You've probably been told that waking up in the night is a sign that something's broken, that if you wake at 3 a.m. and lie there for 45 minutes, you've failed at sleeping. But for most of human history, that wasn't failure. That was Tuesday. That was every night. Here's the twist that changes everything. The problem isn't that you're waking up in the night. The problem is what you do next. When your ancient ancestors woke during the night, they had almost nothing to engage with. No screen lit up 6 inches from their face. No notifications, No infinite scroll of other people's lives, arguments, and emergencies. The darkness was just dark. Their brains, without competing stimulation, would slide naturally toward that quiet, idling state. Low arousal, easy to slip back under. Your brain, when it wakes at 2 a.m., has a very different option sitting right next to the bed. The moment you pick up your phone, you're not just adding light, although the light matters. You're flooding your brain with the single thing it evolved to pay the most attention to: information about your social world and your environment. Every notification is a tiny "something happened" signal. Every scroll is a search for "what changed while I was out." To a brain built by evolution, that's not neutral. That's exactly the kind of stimulus that pulls you out of quiet wakefulness and into full alert mode. The kind of mode you'd want if you heard a twig snap outside your tent. Not the kind of mode that lets you drift back into sleep. So when you wake at 2 a.m. anxious and reach for your phone just to check, you're activating one of the oldest alarm systems your brain has. Except now, there's no predator. There's just a feed that never ends, and a brain that doesn't know the difference between an actual threat and an endless stream of other people's lives. There's a researcher worth knowing here, sleep scientist Matthew Walker, who has spent decades studying what happens in the brain during sleep and wakefulness. His work highlights something crucial. The brain doesn't experience awake at night as inherently stressful. What makes it stressful is the meaning we attach to it and the behaviors we layer on top of it. Lying in the dark, undisturbed, your ancestors' brains had every reason to relax back into sleep. Lying in bed with a glowing screen, your brain has every reason to stay alert. It's not that something is wrong with you for waking up at night. It's that you're waking up into an environment your brain was never designed to handle calmly. There's another layer to this too, and it's about light itself. For most of human history, night meant darkness, with the occasional flicker of firelight. Firelight is dim, warm, and shifts gently. It doesn't tell your brain it's daytime now. Modern light, especially the blue-toned light from phones and screens, does something different. It mimics daylight closely enough that your brain's internal clock gets confused. Researchers studying circadian rhythms, the roughly 24-hour internal cycle that governs sleep, hormone release, and alertness, have repeatedly shown that this kind of light exposure at night can suppress melatonin, the hormone that helps signal it's time to wind down. So picture two people, both waking at 2 a.m. One is your ancestor. Dark tent, dim coals, low murmurs from someone else who's also half awake. Their body reads the environment correctly. It's still night. Nothing demands full alertness. Drift back down. The other is you. Bright screen, scrolling thumb, brain lit up with social information, and now also told, by the light itself, that maybe it's daytime. Two signals stacked on top of each other, both pulling you away from sleep. Neither of you has a broken brain. You're running the exact same hardware. But one of you is using it in the environment it was built for, and the other is using it in an environment that didn't exist for 99.9% of the time that hardware was being shaped.
This is where the bigger picture comes into focus. Waking in the night isn't a malfunction. It's a feature so old it predates clocks, electricity, and even fire as a constant presence. It's a feature that, in the right environment, helped keep entire groups of people alive through the most vulnerable hours of the day. The fact that your brain still does it isn't a glitch left over from evolution. It's evolution still doing exactly what it was built to do. What's changed isn't your brain. What's changed is everything around it. So tonight, when you wake up at 2 a.m., here's something to sit with for a second before you reach for your phone. That moment of being awake in the dark isn't a sign that you're failing at sleep. It's one of the oldest, most consistent experiences a human being can have. Long before there were beds or roofs or blankets, there were people lying awake in the dark, listening, half resting, waiting for the world to feel safe enough to let them drift again. The only difference is what's waiting for you when you open your eyes.